Hello, Assalamualaikum, and good afternoon. So this is Zahiruddin Fitri. I'm the head of e-learning at edX, and today we are going to explore the use of assignments in SPeCTRUM, and for those Moodle users in any public universities, it's your Moodle platform for e-learning. So
Dr. Zahid, sorry ya.
yes, hello. Yeah, I'm actually live now. Okay, so actually with me is Mr. Kamal Zaman. He's from faculty of languages, and he's the one requesting uh, the session on behalf of FDL. Okay, so let's continue. What we are going to look at today is actually the use of SPeCTRUM or Moodle in creating assignment, and you can then add assignments, give assignments to students, and also get them to submit either individually or in groups, and then also how we can use the assignment function, give marks to the students, and also how the students are going to be marked either using rubric or direct marking. Okay, so that's what we are going to go through today. So I'm going to share with you um, my SPeCTRUM page for us to show you how the assignment section or the assignment module is done. Okay, so let's continue with our presentation today. So at first, of course, when you do assignments or any of the work that you're doing, uh, you need to make sure that you have the activity to be turned on first. So I already have my screen to uh, editing on. So that's why you can see that I can add activity here. So what I do is, let's say I'm going to create or add the assignment uh, in my page. Okay, so this is my page, and I'm going to create the assignment here. So creating an assignment, it requires you to go on add an activity or resource, and then click on assignment. So assignment activity, it says here, allows the teacher to communicate tasks, collect work, and provide grades and feedback. And we are going to go through that today. So once you created or selected an assignment, you can select or click on add. Okay, let me show you the button here. So click on add, and it will get you to this adding new assignment. Okay, so adding a new assignment is where we create or where we determine the rules for the assignment. So the rules for the assignment can be from about the name, also availability types, and everything in between. So let's go through the settings one by one. So assignment name is very important. It needs to be named, so that's why you have this exclamation mark here that says it's required. So let's say we put in assignment as assignment 1. Okay, and the description is where you write the instructions. Okay, so write the instructions here. So it could be, for example, submit a file or whatever. Okay, and you can choose to either display the description on the course page, that means in front of your SPeCTRUM page, or if you leave this unchecked, then it will appear in the assignment page for the students. Okay, additional files, this is also quite an interesting feature, because I know some lecturers what you sometimes do is you write the assignment brief in a Word file, okay, or a PDF file. So you have written all this assignment brief really carefully in your Word file. So what you do in the description, you can actually say read the attached brief, and here in the additional files, you just drag and drop a Word file, the Word file where you create the assignment brief. Okay, so for example, if you have a so if you have a file, let me see. I need to find one file that I can share with you. So let's say, for example, okay, I have this. So I can just actually drag and drop the file here. So that becomes the file or the assignment brief that the students will see alongside the instruction for the assignment. Okay, and then what you do, you select or check the availability for the assignment. So it's quite self-explanatory here. Allow submissions from means when the submission starts. Let's say, for example, we are going to start the assignment on the 27th of April. Okay, we enable that. And then the due date would be 24th of June. Okay, you can have that enabled. And then you also have the cutoff date. So what is the difference between the due date and the cutoff date? So on the due date, depending on the assignment, the settings below, you will be able to allow the students to still submit the assignment after the due dates. For example, the students choose to submit the assignment on the 25th of June. So the students will still be able to submit the assignment on the 25th. The cutoff date is a little bit different, where it will disable or make the submission button to the students disappear. Okay, so cutoff date means, for example, let's say we put the cutoff date to be on the 30th of June. So what would happen? On the 30th of June, the students will not be able to submit because the submission button will be lost for them. They will not be able to see the submission button. So that is how due date and cutoff date is different. Okay. So normally myself, I will just disable that, so the students can actually submit after the due date. What I can do, or what I would normally do, is I would slowly or quietly deduct their marks if they submit after the due date. Okay. Remind me to grade is a reminder for the educator to grade the students. I would just normally disable this. So I will just grade it when I can. And then you get to the submission types. So submission types is quite interesting here. Okay, so you have two options. One option is an online text. Okay, so online text means the students will need to write their answers in the assignment itself, in your SPeCTRUM itself, and you can enable word limit. Okay, so for example, the assignment that you want the students to do is submitted online, and you can limit the word to, for example, 1,000 words. So what this means is that the students will not be able to submit more than 1,000 words. And why would you want to do this? So this is my argument for this. If you ask the students a very specific question, or a very to write an essay, for example, if you calculate the word limit for the students carefully, it will discourage the students from copy and pasting from different sources. Because in order for them to answer your assignment questions, they would need to make sure that they answer within the word limit that you set. Okay, so that means they have to write in their own words, so provided that you write the questions properly. So that is where word limit comes into importance, and I think it's a good way for you to discourage the practice of copy and pasting from different sources. Okay, so that is one way to get the student to submit. Another way of submission is actually by file submission. So this is quite normal for us. For educators, what we get the students to do is they get them to submit their Word file or PDF file or a PowerPoint file, for example, and they get the submission. They do the submission and they submit a file to you. So that is two quite obvious way of doing assignment. Another type of assignment is actually where you uncheck both submission type. So that means there's no online text and there's no file submission. So this is actually useful if you are doing the submission or doing the assignment using, or the submission is using something that's physical that the students will need to hand it in to you. For example, a model of a building or a poster on a single board, a board or a piece, okay, or something that cannot be submitted virtually. So that is where you create the assignment in SPeCTRUM, but then the submission of the assignment comes to you in a physical form. And why would you want to have the assignment in SPeCTRUM anyway, since the students are submitting in physically? So what you want to do is actually you can allow the submission to be done physically to you, but you can still mark the student and give them feedback to their work online, which is something that would benefit the students greatly, because they will not have to wait for you to give them feedback face to face. They will be able to read the feedback in their SPeCTRUM, and you can actually control who sees the feedback. So since you are, for example, giving a one-on-one or individual assignment for the students, you can personalize the feedback to each of the students that submits their work. So that is the differences between those different submission types. So let's say, for example, we are enabling file submission. So this is what people normally do, lecturers normally do. You can also set the maximum number of uploaded files. It can be 2, it can be 1, so depending on how you design the assessment for the students. Okay, and then you just allow the upload limit. So this is also up to you. The site upload limit right now is 500 megabyte, which is really big already. Okay, so accept file type. So this is you can restrict the different file types, but I would just leave it blank so that then students can submit any file type. But if you want to limit the file types, then you can also use this box to set that. Okay, so and then we go on to the other settings, but I would say that for starters, if you want to give individual assignment, the settings of availability and submission types is already enough for the students. You don't have to really do anything else. But I would suggest that you look at the other settings, so that then we can actually personalize the feedback or personalize the work even a little bit more. Okay, so let's go into the settings one by one. So feedback types. So feedback types is either feedback comment or feedback file, okay, or of an offline grading sheet. So what are the differences between this? So feedback comment is actually a feedback comment for the submission. Okay, so offline grading sheet is something that you want to maybe download and do the grading on a worksheet, or a feedback file is actually for you to be able to upload a feedback for the students. So it can be something that, for example, if you are working on a student's essay, but you don't use study in, then you can enable feedback files for you to do the assignment or the marking for the students in their Word file, and you want to return the Word file for the students, to the students. So that means the students will be able to see the comments on the Word file that you have commented upon. So you enable the feedback file. You can do that by clicking on feedback file, and probably you want to enable feedback comment as well. Okay, so you just leave. You can either put in the comment in line either yes or no. Doesn't really matter. Okay, and then submission setting. So this is where you set what the kind of submission that the students give. Okay, for example, require the students to click on submit button. I would normally just leave these settings as it is. Okay, if for example I want to change how many times the students can reattempt the work, then I would, for example, do it manually. Okay, and then I can limit the number of attempts either 2 or 3 as and when required. So that is the submission settings for the work. Okay, and then you also can select group settings, okay, or group submission settings. So group submission settings is useful when the students are required to submit their work in groups. So what would happen is, once you mark the student's work, all the members of the group will get the same mark for that assignment. To enable this, you just click on yes, and then it will ask you to do the other submission. But I would leave it as no for now. Okay, I will show you later how we can set or personalize or customize this setting a little bit later. So let's imagine, or let's assume that this is an individual assignment first. Okay, so notifications, you don't really have to change anything here. The grade, okay, so grade is where you choose the grading method. So what I am referring to here is this one. Okay, so we have 3 options. One is simple direct grading. That means you give a number to the students, and then they will get the number, and that is their grade based on the maximum grade that you set here. So you can actually change this to, for example, 50 if you want to. So the maximum grade that the student will get for this work is only 50 marks. Okay, so I'll just leave it at 100 for now. Okay, you can change this to either marking guide, or you can change this to rubrics. Okay, so what are the difference between marking guide and rubrics? Rubrics are a set of assessment criteria that you have already preset in the system. I will show it to you a little bit later. And marking guide is the same set of criteria, but the difference between rubrics and marking guide is that the marking guide will allow you to manually give marks to the students. So it will not rely on where you click the rubrics in. Okay, so that is the difference between marking guide and rubrics. Okay, and then we can leave the other parts of grades as it is. So let's say that I'm leaving this simple direct grading first. Okay, I can change this later, and I'm going to show you how we change it to rubrics and what that rubrics looks like. The rest of the modules, I would think that you don't really have to change it. Normally, I would change the activity completion. So activity completion is where I get the system to inform the students that they have submitted their marks automatically. Okay, so after I'm done with that, I will just click on save and return to course. So now we have this assignment that we have created for the students. I can still change the title by clicking on the pencil, and let's say I want to change, I want to add a little bit more information here. So it would be PowerPoint 1. Okay, so assignment 1, PowerPoint 1. So click enter, and then it will give you the assignment name and also assignment. The assignment name. So what the students will see is when they, let me show you what the students will see. So I can actually switch my role to student. Okay, I bet a few people didn't know that we can do that. So when you click on assignment, so this is what the students will see. Since the date of the submission is not yet there, so it's only on Monday 27th, then the submission button will not appear. Normally it will appear at the bottom of the page here. Okay, so that is what the students will see. Okay, so let's have a break for a bit, and let's go to the questions to see any questions that that appears here. Okay, so I see that there are two questions that is being published here right now. Okay, can we click on both online and file submission? Yes, I think you can do that. Let us try that for a bit. So, but clicking on both would why would you want to click on both? So that is, I think, my question. Because when you click on both, it means that the students can either write or do their work online, or they can do their work as a submission file. Okay, so and my question is that when you enable both like that, it's not really easy for you to then check which one is the one that you wanted to mark. Okay, for example, if you enable both online text and file submission, then a single student might submit two things, and they might do it in the online text, and then they submit the same file as a file submission. So where do you mark, especially when there is discrepancy between the two submissions? So I would advise that you choose one and you apply that to both to all of the students in your class. Okay, so that is a question that's being answered. So click on both online and file submission, and this is from Dr. Sri Devi, for example. The second question is what is submission statement under submission settings? So let's see submission statement under submission settings. Okay, so let me share you what this question means. Okay, so the question asks about this one. Require the student accept the submission statement. So let's see what this says. It says require that students accept the submission statement for all submission to this assignment. So to be honest, I have never used this before, so I don't really see how that works. Okay, and it doesn't really something that's not really required, especially on my side. But you are free to try it on, and then maybe you can report to us what happened when you do that. Okay, so let's look at other questions. If there's okay, in submission, if submission is in group type, how the group members should be defined. So I will get to that a little bit later. Okay, and then there's another. So this is a question from at SME. So you also have a question from Stuart Manley. So the question reads: is there any requirement about the type of file that can be uploaded? Okay. So based on experience, after I download some document, they show 0 byte and some cannot even download it for marking. Any advice? All right. So I think there whether the type is something that is determined by you yourself as an educator. So if you choose to accept certain file types, then be specific with it. For example, the document or document add, the docx, or it can be PDF. Okay, the difference between Word and PDF in the assignment feature in our Moodle or our Spectrum is that if you enable only PDF assignment, or if you enable PDF assignment to be submitted, what would happen is when you grade the assignment, the PDF will become an annotated PDF that you can mark on top of this, on top. Okay, so I will try and find an example of that. But yes, it depends on how you want the student to submit to you actually. So if you would like to submit, if you would like them to submit PDF file, go ahead, submit a PDF file. Okay, if you want them to submit in Word or PowerPoint, go ahead and do that. Okay, so part two of the question by Stuart is that based on experience, some documents shows zero byte. So I think that has to do with either one, the maximum submission submission size. That means the students should not be submitting a file that is too big, or another is if it shows 0 byte, that means probably the students did not submit the right kind of file, okay, or they submitted the wrong file. So that is something that you need to check, and it needs to be looked at on a case by case basis. Okay, so we also have a question here. Can we know how who in the group enroll? Okay, so this is also about group submission. And one Sharina asked about how long will the marks be available for students to check. Okay, so how long will the marks will be available is until the course closes for the semester. Okay. But normally we do with our system is that we will close the system for the students about 1 or 2 weeks after board list. Sometimes we go even earlier, probably about 3 days after the board list, because after the board list and when the marks have been submitted to PMO, then there will be no use for the students to see their marks. So that's why we allow the marks to be seen, and we close the system after the board list, the faculty board list. So that is the question to that. Okay, the answer to that. Sorry. Okay, so let's continue on with the course that we have. So where do we? Let me change the screen. Okay, so we are back in our Spectrum assignment. Okay, and now we are going to look at group submission. Okay, so now what we wanted to do just now is we are going to look at the group submission, and I'm going to go walk you through submission for students in group. Before you can allow the students submit in group SCS, you need to create the groups first for your students. The way to do that is you go back to your in front of the page. So let's save and return to course. Okay, go back to the front page and locate the gear button. Click on more. Okay, and you come into the courses administration. So click on the users tab, and this is where you control the enrollment and also groups. So what you do, click on groups, okay, and you see that I have 3 groups already in here. So let's say that I'm not using any of the groups, so I just select them, delete them. Okay, so now I have no groups. Normally students will be grouped into a single main group. So sometimes you would see, for example, group one that is being allocated to you by the faculty, and then it will have a number of students already in there. Okay, so let's assume that there is no such group. So I can create the groups depending on how I want to create the groups. I would normally either create manually, so that means create groups one by one, but I would rather auto create groups. So that means I can create many groups in one go using the auto setting. So creating groups is allows you to select the groups and also the grouping. So let's go through this setting one by one. How to create groups? You can change the group name. So instead of group, I want to say kumpulan. Okay, and that can be changed. So if you put in kumpulan and using the @ it will give you kumpulan A, B, C, D. Okay. So if you change this to hash symbol like this, it will give you group with numbers. For example, group 1, group 2, group 3. So let's let's go with the alphabet. I want the alphabet, and you can change or you can auto create the group based on either the number of groups or members per group. So number of group, that means, for example, I have 150 students in my class, and I want to divide them into 10 groups. So what I do, number of groups, I will put in 10. And the students will create for me 10 groups. Then depending on the group member selection, I would be able to create the groups for the students one by one. Okay. So select members with role, just put it as all, and then allocate room allocation can be random. So let's say, okay, let's not use this one because it doesn't have any people in there. So let me go to SPeCTRUM. I wanted to show you how this works with students in the group. So let's cancel this first. Okay, I'll go to an active class with students. Okay, so let's go here. Okay, so this is an active class right now. So click on more, users, groups. Okay, so this is already a group that I already have with my students. So this is what I was mentioning just now. So this is the group that's given to me by the faculty. So I have already 41 students in the main group that's given by the faculty, and I want to create groups. So go back to the setting just now, how to create groups. So I'm changing this to kumpulan testing. Okay, so I'll just do it just quickly and quickly delete it after the course. Okay, number of groups I want to have let's say 10 groups. Okay, and then select members with the student role, of course, because I want only the students in my group, and then select the students from none is okay, just leave it none. Select members from group 1. Okay, so I don't have any groupings right now, so that's why I put none. So group 1, so this is the whole of my student list. Okay, and then allocate the members randomly. So I can click on preview here, and sorry, okay, so let's say no grouping. Okay, let's preview. So this is a group that is being given to me randomly by the system. So I can then start playing around with the allocation of the group. But it will sort of give me a head start with the groups. I can also create a blank group. Okay, so to create blank group and then get the students to join in the groups themselves, what I would do is the member allocation I can change to no allocation. So no allocation means click on preview, there will be nobody in the group. Will only give me just the group names and an empty group for the students to come in later. Okay, so that is how groups and is done. And another thing, when creating groups for the students, what I would suggest you do is I would suggest that you create groupings with the group. Okay, so why would you want a grouping in a group? So grouping allows you to change the composition of the group members for different assignments. So for example, this group that I want to create, so this is for, so I'll allow for, click on new grouping. So actually the other names are the name of the grouping that I have created just now. So just click on new grouping and put in the grouping name. For example, this one is training testing. So what it will do is it will create the groups that I set just now, all this A to J, into a training testing grouping. So that means that is a group within a grouping. Okay, so that is how grouping, group and grouping is done. Okay, so let's go back to our course just now. Okay, so let's go back here. So this is the assignment that I've created. Okay, so we are creating groups first. So I will just auto create number of groups. I would just create 4, for example. Okay, no allocation. Okay, so this one is new grouping with the name of the grouping would be Simon. So submit. Okay, so I've created this grouping A to D. Okay, so let's go back to our assignment. Now let's edit settings, click on edit setting and select grouping submission. So student submit in group should be yes. So you can click yes now. Okay, and then require group to make submission. So what happens is that if enabled, users are not members of will be enabled to make submission. So you need to make sure that all the students are in a group. Okay, so just leave it as yes. Okay, put it as yes. Require on group members to submit no, and then you check the grouping assignment. So that means the students will need to submit in groups. Students who are not member of any groups will not be able to submit. Okay, and the grouping for the student group is assignment 1. Assignment 1 grouping that we have just now. Okay, so that is assignment. So what would happen is that when the students submit, they will submit as part of a group. Okay, so notification, you can leave it as that. And then we are going to look at also the grading method to be later. Okay, so you can just leave this all the other ones as it is. Okay, so save and return to course. So now you have created a group work where only the students in a group can do their submission. Okay, and you have the attachment, the brief of the work as an attachment. Okay, so I hope you are still able to hear me. Okay. Okay, so that is creating a group assignment. Okay, Okay, and then let's look at the assignment rubrics. That is the another part that we are going to look at. So assignment rubrics allows the educator to create a rubric where they can give the students the uh, the marks automatically. Okay, so using rubrics, so that means you need to enable the rubric grading method. Okay, and you can leave all this as it is. Okay, and you click on save, return to course. Okay, so let's go back to the courses now. Okay, so after you've created after you've selected the rubric, what will happen is when you click on this, okay, you can then define the rubrics for the students. Okay, so defining the rubrics for the students allows you to then create rubrics for the students. So a rubric is where you select a criteria and then use the criteria to give marks to the student automatically. So let's say, for example, I'm giving this rubric. So of course, each rubric will need to have a name. So rubric one. So probably a little bit more information. Assignment. Let's say assignment, essay type assignment. Okay, assignment essay. Okay, so then you can then click the criteria. So criteria is the main criteria. For example, so for essay, you want them to check them on format. Okay, then you want to add another criteria for grammar. Okay, and then uh, let's say, for example, scholarship. Scholarly format. That means yeah, citations and everything else. Okay, and then for example, arguments. Okay, and then you can change the points. Uh, so this is, for example, zero. I don't really want to have zero, so I would start with one normally. So just put in one here. Okay, I'll change this first, then we will change the descriptions. Okay, two, and that is three. You can always add another level. For example, now it's four, so we have four levels for format. Then you can change or edit the description. So the description says 1 point for uh, bad format. Then here the 2 points for not so bad. Of course, for this purpose or this training, I'm not going to write the decision thoroughly, but I would normally write very specific descriptions for each of the points that I give for the students. So this is just for show. So because the format or the description for the rubrics is important for the markers, because the markers are going to use this to compare the work of the students against the required or against the work that the students handed in. Okay, so it's very important for you to actually be specific and for you to be able to be thorough in doing or checking on the format. Okay, so it goes to the same as the grammar. So let's just put this quickly. Bad, not bad, good. You can have different levels for example, like this. So you can have grammar only 3 points, but then for scholarly format it can be 4 points. You can even change the number here, so you can have 0 here, then you can put in here could be 2, and here could be 4. So you can play around with the points given for the format as you wish. Okay, so that totally up to you. Let's finish this quickly. Okay, argument, so argument, and excellent argument. Okay, so it's just to have the rubrics, and what you do now, you can change the settings for the rubrics, calculate the rubrics based on the minimum score. Okay, and then allow the users to preview rubric. I would strongly suggest that you use this, because what it does is it allows the student to know what is going to be um, the rubrics that they are measured upon. Okay, so save rubric and make it ready. Now this is the rubric that the students will be using for this assignment. So that is how you create or select the rubrics for the students. Now just check it one more time. So you are using grading method for the rubric. So that is how we can create marks or create the work or the assignment for the students. So, and then you can proceed to giving marks for the students. So that is basically what the question, or what would you need to check, or what you need to set up for your assignment, and then your students will be able to submit their work to you. Okay, so let's save and return to course, and let's look at a few more questions so that we can answer them. Okay, so okay, is the student able to submit a video assignment? Okay, interesting question. So let's go back to the question settings and see whether we can do that. Okay, so file types. The file type shows that you can actually submit video or an audio. So obviously that is uh, permissible. So you can actually get students to submit video. Okay, can we create empty group and then let the students choose their own group members? I think I've gone through this, so that's okay. That's submitted. How can I form the group manually, not by auto generate, as the students form their own group? So what you can do is you create an empty group and then use the group choice function. Okay, so let me show you what the group choice function is about. Okay, and then you can see how it's done. Okay, so along with your assignment, you can add group choice. So I will just show this very, very quickly because we only have about 10 minutes left. Okay, group choice. Click on add. Okay, so here the group choice name. So let's say choose your group here. Okay, so and then what's important is, so you can the instructions goes here. The instructions can be whatever that you want to instruct the students. But the important thing is for you to then be able to change the number of allow the number of students in a group. So you do that by first clicking on the group. So the group that you wanted to submit the assignment in. Okay, so for example, this one is I've already created that grouping just now. So this is the grouping assignment 1. We have 4 groups. I will add that grouping here. So limit, what you change is actually you change here. Okay, limit the number of responses. So you enable it. Now you see that we have a square bracket. So I want each group to not have no more than 7 members per group. So what I do is put 7 there and apply to all groups. And you see is that what you see is the allocation for the groups A, B, C, D automatically changed to 7. So anything that's here in the selected groups will change according to the general limitation that you selected. So for example, after you calculated, actually you need to have more than 7. So change it to 9, for example, apply to all groups, and you will see that automatically it will change. Okay, so this will allow the students, so when I click save and display and let the page load, so this will allow the students to actually choose which is the group that they are going to go to. Then when they save their choice, the group member name will appear on the right hand side. Okay, so for file submission, so the next question, file submission is if the student allow to resubmit revised report, the first draft, how to do settings. So this is where what you do is you change the settings in here. So maximum submission settings, the attempts reopen. So this is where you change that. So if you want them to be able to submit a revised report, then you change the number of you change the attempts to be manually or automatically until pass. But then you need to set the pass mark. I would normally just use normally, and then maximum attempts you can change it from 1 to how many numbers that you need. Okay, so that is where we change that. Okay, is it possible to make a submitted assignment available for everybody? So let me check. So I think okay, so I know. So where you change that is actually in common module settings. Okay, so here in group mode, you change it to visible group. Okay, so that would allow students from different groups to see the other people's assignment, but they will not be able to change anything on it, just see it. Can we change marking from standard to brick after we open assignment or after the student submit? No. Okay, so that is the once the student has submitted their work, then you cannot change the grading from rubric to another. So you need to be doing that very early on. How do we set if we open certain date for submission in time, but students can only answer within 40 minutes? That is where you change this availability settings, because the availability settings allows you to actually set the time. So for example, just now 40 minutes. So I'll make it as the same date, 37th of April. Okay. So let's say we start at 9 o'clock and we finish at 9:40. So that will enable only 40 minutes of submission window, okay, for the students. So what you do is change that and you click on save and return to course. So now the students will only be able to submit their work within 40-minute time window. Okay. So the next question is, would it possible to allocate range of marks under each level? Okay, so this is how you change the assignment using marking guides. Okay, so a marking guide works a little bit differently than rubrics, where you set the criteria for the marking and the maximum marks, but then you are free as the marker to change that. So what you do is you change this from rubric to marking guide. Then you create the marking guide for the students. Okay, so I think that's uh, all the time that we have left for today. I hope this session has um, uh, been useful for you. Uh, I have one last thing that I wanted to show you is which is what happens when you want to mark or to give marks to the students, and how would you then download the marks. Okay, so let's look at an assignment that's already finished that I can show it to you. Okay, so this is a work that was done by my students. So so when the student has submitted their work, what you will see is something like this. Okay, so let's change the status to. So this is actually group work. So some of them would have submitted, some of them would not. Okay, so what you will see is it will say submitted for grading, and it says here graded because I've already graded this work. When you want to grade the students, what you do is you click on grade. So and then you'll be able to see the grading. So what I did with my student is that they submit a JPG file, okay, which I can open up separately. And then what I have is actually a rubric. So this is a rubric that I have for the students. So what I just need to do is I just need to choose. So these are the marks that I've already allocated. So I just click on wherever, and then the system will automatically calculate the marks for the students. So in this case, it's actually 65.71. So that is how we see the marks and how we grade rubrics. What you do is just click, okay, and then it will change marks. But this is from last year's cohort, so don't really have to worry about changing anything here. Okay, so that is the rubrics and sorry, the marks. So now, how do I download the marks? So what you can do is you go to grading action here, you view the grade book. Okay, so what you will see is this page, and now you can actually export. And I want to I want to see only that work that the student did, which is the infographic. So I will just uncheck everything, okay, and check this. So it will download an Excel spreadsheet for me, okay, with the marks for infographics, and then I will just click on download, okay, and I would have gotten this downloaded for me. So this is the Excel file for the whole of the class that has submitted their work. Okay, so of course it waits for a little bit for it to open. Okay, so these are all the marks that I've created, given in the system. Okay, so now remember what I told you before. Even if you get the students to submit physical artifacts of learning for you, you would still be able to download their marks, and you can actually export this mark into game. Okay, I think that's all we have for today. So thank you for being with us. Okay, Kamara Zaman, do you want to say anything?
Hello, Doctor. Can you hear me?
Yes.
Okay.
Before we end,
Actually,
yes.
my colleagues, okay, they are asking because we are sharing SPeCTRUM with other lecturers and other teachers. So how to create auto grouping when we share our SPeCTRUM with other teachers? For example, let's say my group, there are 6 teachers teaching and they're the same course.
Can you say that again?
Hold on. Okay. For university courses, English university courses, okay, one subject is taught by many people.
Okay.
Therefore, we have so many groups, in one spectrum.
Okay.
So the question is how to create auto grouping, for the one that you have shown us, when we are sharing groups with other teachers. Because if we use auto grouping, most probably that we might interfere with other classes. Is it
Oh,
possible for us to do that?
unfortunately, it's not quite simple if you have a problem or an issue like that. So
Okay.
but I think the easiest way to get it done is create an empty group first and get the students from that separate group to register into the group. Then you can then do another level of grouping of the students. So that I think
So
that would be the way to do it. So first you create an empty group for
manually.
that lecturer separately manually, and then after the students from that group entered the main grouping that the lecturer does, then
Mhm.
you can actually separate the group even more.
Okay. Understand. So in other words, it's not easier for us to create auto groups, where we share our spectrum with other people.
Well, no, yeah, it's not straightforward, but
Not
it's
safe.
actually but it is doable.
Doable, okay.
Yeah.
Thank you, Doctor.
All right, so I think that's all the time that we have for today. So thank you very much for being with us, Encik Kamrul Zaman, and also for the audiences. Thank you for the questions,
Thank you,
uh,
Doctor.
and thank you for participating and giving us really, really good questions that I believe everybody, some of this do need the answers to this question. So until we see you again in another set or another session of webinar. So thank you very much. Assalamualaikum and good afternoon. Bye bye.